vessels being built here are sturdy and of shallow draft. River tugs for service in the vast transportation system that comprises Northern Transportation Company Limited. These tugs will have to run an obstacle course of no mean proportions. There are huge boulders in the Bear River. There are ice flows in the Beaufort Sea, and uncertain and changing water levels on the Mackenzie River make navigation difficult. These vessels are tailored to suit a country that doesn't forgive mistakes in planning and execution. Breakdowns are time-consuming and costly. Shipyards in the north are few. From British Columbia, where they are built, the tugs are shipped north by rail. Flat cars carry the segments to waterways on the Athabasca River and to Hay River on Great Slave Lake for final assembly. Barges are huge, unwieldy hollow steel pontoons. They're built in sections and have compartments for bulk petroleum loads. The deck area is kept free of obstructions to permit maximum loading space and a clear working area for forklifts. The permissible draft of both towboats and barges is governed by the water levels in the operating area. Water levels vary considerably. There's high water during spring runoff. Midsummer is hot and dry in the north, and the water is low in the late summer months. The barges are assembled at Hay River. NTCL's operations cover the Mackenzie watershed. They include the Athabasca River and Lake Athabasca, Peace and Slave Rivers, Great Slave Lake, the Mackenzie River, Great Bear River, and Great Bear Lake. In the western Arctic, operations extend from the Boothia Peninsula westward to Colville River, Alaska. The area is boundaried by 55 degrees to 73 degrees north latitude and 93 degrees to 151 degrees west longitude. NTCL operates a fleet of 27 towboats and 142 all-steel barges. In addition, there are 2 coasting vessels. The equipment is thoroughly modern and up-to-date. It is also exceptionally rugged. Experience gathered in years of service in Canada's north shows in every tug and every barge. This experience didn't come easy. No balmy blue lagoons beckon the river people, no palm-fringed beaches. Instead, there is pack ice, ever ready to crush a ship's hull like so much cardboard. Fierce storms spring up on Great Bear Lake almost without warning. Rocky fangs in the San Soo Rapids will rip a hull from stem to stern if skipper or pilot are not careful or not competent. Alexandra Falls. When this turbid water reaches the town of Hay River, Northwest Territories, it has become placid. Better still, it has become navigable. Hay River is one of the 2 modern receiving terminals of NTCL. The other is Waterways in Alberta, some 300 miles further south. Lumber, trailers and pipes, drilling equipment, aviation gasoline and washing machines. Almost every conceivable type of freight has to be shipped north at some time. Foodstuffs and refrigerators, as well as dangerous chemicals and insulation material. Anything at all to make exploration and production possible. To survive the long, dark, severe Arctic winter. To have some modicum of comfort. NTCL's Hay River Receiving Terminal is accessible year-round by road and rail. During the short summer season, freight is accepted around the clock. No time is lost. Shipments are checked for completeness. Nothing is too big, nothing too small. Everything receives the same careful attention. Pallets protect the freight and ease the handling of general cargo. It is an art to load a 700-ton barge properly. Frozen meat, frozen food, frozen vegetables. Anything perishable is transported in a refrigeration barge. All freight is placed compactly and with as little loss of space as possible on the wide cargo deck. Then it is secured and lashed in place. Tows leave Hay River at any time of day, or night as the case may be. The long haul has started. 4 barges in line astern. The N.T. Richard. "1,100 miles to Tuktoyaktuk, 1,500 miles to Alaska's North Slope." The Great Slave Lake and Mackenzie River pilot reports that fog appears with little warning in this area. But fog is just an additional hazard, one of many. The first real obstacle on the way is the Providence Rapids, waiting to test the skill of skipper and crew. Lakes, reindeer moss, muskeg. 500 miles north, there is still ice on Great Bear Lake. Ships are rarely able to get across to Port Radium until mid-July, and there have been years when shipping could not commence until the beginning of August. Navigation on Great Bear Lake has the shortest season south of the Arctic, only 2.5 months to get vital supplies and equipment into the region. No fishing yet for the Indians at Fort Franklin. The Great Bear River, about 70 miles long, connects the lake with the Mackenzie River. A portage is located about midway. NTCL has established a camp to facilitate the handling of freight and the maintenance of equipment. A pipeline has been built. Bulk oil products are pumped across the portage. Here, as well as anywhere else throughout NTCL's transportation system, local residents are employed wherever possible. The Great Bear River enters the Mackenzie River below Fort Norman. Bear River water is exceptionally clear and clean. It is being used as fresh water supply for tugs plying the Mackenzie River. Mile 513, Craggy Bear Mountain. The Husky and her tow have covered almost half the distance to Tuktoyaktuk. A helicopter on his way to ice patrol duty in the Arctic. The routine of running the river has taken over. Watch and watch, clean sandbars, willow-covered islands, the shoreline awash in its own reflection. Always present, the sound of the engines, relentlessly pounding, steady, reliable. In the 1920s, oil was discovered at the mouth of Bosworth Creek. In 1957, there were 22 producing wells in the area. Today, Norman Wells supplies the North with petroleum products, heating oil for the scattered settlements along rivers and lakes from northern Alberta to the Arctic, diesel fuel, aviation gasoline for bush planes. The current has picked up a little, 4 to 5 miles per hour. 70 miles below Norman Wells, the San Soo Rapids are waiting. The heat of midsummer. A single lightning strike suffices, and the bone-dry timber bursts into flames. Old Sol wraps himself up in a blanket of glowing smoke. Providence Rapids, Green Island Rapids, and now the San Sue Rapids. All are dangerous and difficult to navigate. At the head of the San Sue Rapids, the river constricts to a width of 3/4 of a mile and abruptly changes direction to the north and northeast. Close to shore, dangerous back eddies are encountered. The rapids are formed by a rocky ledge that extends into midstream from the east bank. Tugs navigate the rapids with one barge at a time. The remainder of the tow is secured to the river banks above and below the rapids. The current is swift, and the channel through the upper rapids is less than 100 feet wide. Lack of rainfall over the watershed of the Mackenzie River and its tributaries caused the water levels to drop. What used to be a passable channel has now turned into a treacherous passage, and the smoke makes things even more difficult. The barges draw too much. Bulk oil must be pumped into a lighter to reduce the displacement. No more than 3 feet and 6 inches are permissible now. Below that, rocks, boulders, and disaster. The Department of Transport Aids to Navigation Branch keeps a close watch on water levels and channel conditions, as well as aids to navigation. Buoys are laid to mark the channel, but the river is swift and full of surprises. A floating log may have displaced a buoy overnight. An anchor cable may have broken. The skipper is responsible for safely getting the freight through. His decision is final. It is based on the information supplied by the modern tools of his trade: radar, radio, and echo sounder. But the element that ties it all together and makes it work is local knowledge. Years of training are required to become a capable officer and navigator in the area. NTCL's Radium Yellowknife. Skipper and pilot are experts. The pilots are men raised on the rivers, taught by their ancestors and their own experience to read the currents. They hold a knowledge almost as old as the river itself. They know the river.
Reading Yellowknife, Kentucky Rapids. Will you try CB? Try CB, over. CB is on, over.
They're through. Limestone cliffs overshadow the barge tie-up. One by one, the bulky steel pontoons are being guided, coaxed, and forced downriver until the tow can be made up again. "250 miles east of the San Sue Rapids, the ice has gone from Great Bear Lake, 12,000 square miles, the largest body of fresh water in Canada. There's an abundance of fish at the head of the Great Bear River, and the natives make good use of it. The Radium Gilbert. We saw her last on the slip in Port Radium. The Radium Gilbert completes a crossing of Great Bear Lake, 170 miles of open water between Fort Franklin and Port Radium. The Bear River run starts at Fort Norman on the Mackenzie. The Watson Lake pushes one barge at a time upstream. The channel is tortuous and twisting in the clear water and meanders from bank to bank. It would be impossible to tow a barge in line astern. There are too many shoals and gravel bars, and the tug would not be able to control the barge. The draft for both tug and barge is limited to 2 feet and 2 inches. The tug is of tunnel construction, propellers mounted within the hull in streamlined tunnels. The tunnels are part of the ship's bottom. Inside these tunnels, the propellers are so well protected that even groundings will cause very little damage. She may not be the most beautiful ship in the world, the Watson Lake, but her design is thoroughly functional, dictated by the waters she is plying. Nothing else could do her job. The portage starts at the NTCL camp. Trucks and forklifts speed freight through this 9-mile bottleneck. There's a sense of urgency in the entire operation. Continuous activity during the all too brief summer season. Another month and there will again be ice on Great Bear Lake, effectively blocking all navigation. The portage circumvents the St. Charles Rapids. On the other side, the Radium Franklin takes over. Again, a tug of extremely shallow draft. Propellers mounted in tunnels for protection. The fast-flowing stream is even more dangerous on this side. The Radium Gilbert, on her way from Port Radium to meet the Radium Franklin and take over the freight. Heating oil to keep the houses comfortable during the long winter. Diesel oil to provide electricity. Paint, food, clothing. The lake contains depths of over 1,300 feet. It has yet to be surveyed throughout. While the Radium Franklin races back downriver, the Radium Gilbert takes the covered barge on a long tow astern. 170 miles ahead lies Port Radium, 170 miles of open water. Sudden storms are savage and violent in this region. Navigation is an exact science. It becomes a difficult science without buoys, beacons, and range markers. It becomes even more exacting near and north of the polar circle. In addition to climatic and geographical hazards, the horizontal intensity of the Earth's magnetic field weakens significantly. The reliability of a magnetic compass is greatly reduced. NTCL's tugs are equipped with gyro compasses that depend for their operation on the rotation of the Earth about its axis. The North Polar Circle cuts through Great Bear Lake. A cool, chilly morning finds tug and barge safely near Port Radium at the eastern end of McTavish Arm. For many years, the Belgian Congo had a monopoly on the production of radium. The discovery of pitchblende here in the early 1930s broke that monopoly. There's also enough silver here to warrant production. Everything Port Radium needs must be brought in by water or over a rugged winter road. Every NTCL agency in the vast area is equipped with radio transmitter and receiver. Rapidly changing climatic conditions are reported. Sudden cases of emergency can be handled with the utmost dispatch. Most important, however, radio contact is maintained with all boats, and position reports are given on schedule. The location of tugs, barges, and freight can be pinpointed almost immediately. And yet, there are times when no messages will get through. Ionospheric disturbances are frequent in the north. At times, they may render the entire band of useful frequencies completely useless. The result is a radio blackout. The crackling noise of static defeats any attempt at communication. This condition may last for any period, from a few minutes to several days.
1019.
Mile 675, the Ramparts Rapids. Perpendicular limestone cliffs rise to 200 feet. High up on the east bank at mile 683, Fort Good Hope. Most of the landing areas at the older settlements are equipped with floating docks. In many places, however, freight must still be delivered onto the beach. Heavy rains in northern Alberta and in the Peace River area have brought about higher water levels throughout the Mackenzie River system. Rocks that used to be awash are now hidden under 3 feet of water. Sandbars have turned into dangerous shallows. Formerly, shallow water has become navigable. The Angus Sherwood proceeds with caution downstream. Gradually, the character of the river changes. There's a cold wind blowing from the north, and the effect of distant gales becomes noticeable in the water level of the river. The Mackenzie River Delta is a huge, flat maze of channels between low, treeless islands, spongy, soft, and wet. Kittigazuit, a name on the chart, a barge tie-up. The passage from here to Tuktoyaktuk is exposed to the open waters of the Beaufort Sea. 4 barges are left behind to be picked up later. The Arctic Ocean shoals gently here towards a plain and sandy shore. The 1-fathom line extends to about 2,000 feet. Eskimo country. They hunt the white whale, locally known as whitefish. Cold air with little capacity for holding moisture. Temperature inversions occur frequently. The resulting infractions hinder greatly the sighting and identification of landmarks. NTCL's Frank Broderick makes her home port in Tuktoyaktuk. This unique vessel was built especially for service in Arctic waters. She can carry 1,000 tons of general cargo, as well as 225,000 gallons of bulk. The double bow doors with a hinged ramp come in handy when freight has to be discharged onto the beach, where unloading facilities are not available. Destination of this load is Saviovik, or Bullen Point, on Alaska's north slope. Ice and weather permitting, the Angus Sherwood, with vital supplies for drilling and exploration, will reach the landing place in 2.5 days. No lighthouses guide the tow. There are neither beacons nor buoys to show the way. Meridians converge rapidly, and piloting becomes the primary method of navigation. The waters are shoal and restricted. Nowhere is alertness more necessary. Alertness and judgment based on years of experience in Arctic waters. The ice has normally moved offshore by mid-July, but then few things are normal and predictable in the Arctic. High winds may raise the tide as much as 9 feet above normal high water, and a strong offshore blow may lower the normal datum by 3 feet. A slight shift in the wind renders an ice forecast useless, and the polar pack may close the precious stretch of navigable coastal water without warning. Ice. All forward movement ceases. It is time to paint the ship. It is also time to call for a helicopter.